Hello everyone, we're on chapter 11 and we're on paragraph 8, so let's get started. What is here meant by purposefulness? The coherence of percepts to form a whole. But since underlying all percepts there are laws, that is, ideas, which we discover through our thinking, it follows that the systematic coherence of the parts of a perceptual whole is simply the ideal coherence of the parts of an ideal whole contained in this perceptual whole. To say that an animal or a man is not determined by an idea floating in the air is a misleading way of putting it, and the point of view he is disparagingly automatically loses its absurdity as soon as the expression is put right. An animal certainly is not determined by an idea floating in the air, but it definitely is determined by an idea inborn in it and constituting the law of its being. It is just because the idea is not external to the object, but works within it as its very essence, that we cannot speak of purposefulness. It is just the person who denies that natural beings are determined from without, and it does not matter in this context whether it be by an idea floating in the air or existing outside the creature in the mind of a world creator, who must admit that such beings are not determined by purpose and plan from without, but by cause and law from within. I construct a machine purposefully if I connect its parts together in a way that is not given in nature. The purposefulness of the arrangement consists in just this, that I embody the working principle of the machine as its idea into the machine itself. The machine becomes thereby an object of perception with the idea corresponding to it. Natural objects are also entities of this kind. Whoever calls a thing purposeful simply because it is formed according to a law may, if he wish, apply the same term to the objects of nature, but he must not confuse this kind of lawfulness with that of subjective human action. For purpose to exist, it is absolutely necessary that the effective cause shall be a concept, in fact, the concept of the effect. But in nature we can nowhere point to concepts acting as causes. The concept invariably turns out to be nothing but the ideal link connecting cause and effect. Causes are present in nature only in the form of percepts. And 8 is summarized as follows. What Hammerling really means here when he says of purposefulness is the coherence of percepts to form a whole. To say that man is not determined by an idea floating in the air is misleading, and his point of view automatically becomes absurd. Man is not determined by an idea floating in the air, but rather by an idea born in it and constituting the law of its being. We can speak of purpose if the idea is external to the object, not if it, that is, the idea, works within it as its essence. For purpose to exist, it is necessary that the cause be a concept of the effect. In nature, we do not see concepts acting as causes. Concepts in nature merely provide the ideal link connecting cause and effect. Causes in nature are only the forms of percepts. So, in this paragraph, Steiner is basically talking about he doesn't agree with his concept of purpose because it seems like his idea of purpose is really not Steiner's idea of purpose, and really it's about their concept of purposefulness is really the concept of lawfulness. And I think Steiner is bringing up this point because we need to sort of distinguish the concept between a purpose, which only applies to human action, and then the concept of lawfulness. As he says here, an idea is not external to the object, but works within it. And as he uses an example of an animal. So the way an animal is constructed, with the legs, it has balance and all that stuff, it sees, it looks like there's purpose according to Hammerling, but really it's the lawfulness of these ideas going on, and it's not purpose. And that's what he's pointing out in this paragraph. Steiner continues to give an example of somebody who is making a machine, and basically they're constructing the machine with these principles in mind, but to say that it has purpose, that is incorrect, because the machine is just being constructed to follow various principles and laws and whatnot. So although perhaps the person who is creating it has a purpose in mind, the fact that the machine itself has order and rules and laws and whatnot to make it work doesn't mean the machine itself has purpose. For the machine to have purpose, according to Steiner's philosophy, is the machine would have to have this idea of something that, let's say it wants a girlfriend in the real world or whatever, then it goes and looks online for, or whatever, for a girlfriend. So that would be an example of the machine having purpose. But the person who is constructing the machine, that person is the one having purpose, because they're creating the machine. And so that's what he's doing as well in that paragraph with that example. Again, in the beginning, he just says, what does he mean by purposefulness, and what is purposefulness? And it's really the coherence of percepts to form a whole. And again, as he said, all percepts, within all percepts there are ideas, which are laws. So obviously things in the world like plants and animals, they have certain laws, they have certain ideas, but that's not purpose the way Steiner sees it. And he says, for a purpose to exist, it is absolutely necessary that the effective cause shall be a concept. In fact, the concept of the effect. So again, we don't see that happening in nature and whatnot. It's really just the ideal link. He says what we see is the ideal link connecting the cause and effect. That is, the laws that we're perceiving within, plants and animals. So that's what he means in that paragraph. So we're just going to finish up with paragraph 9. Dualism may talk of world purposes and natural purposes. Wherever there is a systematic linking of cause and effect for our perception, the dualist may assume that we see only the carbon copy of a connection in which the absolute cosmic being has realized its purposes. For monism, with the rejection of an absolute cosmic being, never experienced but only hypothetically inferred, all ground for assuming purposes in the world and in nature also falls away. So paragraph 9 is summarized as follows. Monism rejects the absolute cosmic being, and as a result, any assumption regarding purpose in the world and in nature falls away. Dualists believe that an absolute cosmic being knows the purposes of the cause and effect of our perceptions. Okay, so in this paragraph, it just talks about for dualists, because they believe in an absolute cosmic being, or what we would call God, that's why nature has purpose. But for Steiner, what he calls monism, his philosophy, it rejects this concept of an absolute cosmic being because it's really irrelevant to the concept of purpose, because what we're seeing in nature is not necessarily purpose, because we don't know if there is a God or there isn't. But it's not quite fair for us to just assume that there is and then create this whole worldview based on something we don't really know for sure. But what Steiner is pointing out is that what we see in nature is lawfulness, and at least we can all agree, regardless of whether there is a God, because that's almost, it doesn't matter for monism. It's like, well, if there is a God, it doesn't matter. If there is a God, it doesn't matter anyways, What purpose is really only found in human action, and we create purpose in our lives. There is no purpose in nature. There is lawfulness, and so that's basically the whole point of these paragraphs, is really as well to distinguish between the concept of lawfulness, principles, ideas, and whatnot, the order that we see in this world, versus, purpose, which is really something only found in human action. So those are the two distinguishing points, and that's one of the main points in this chapter. So that's all we're going to cover. I think the whole point in talking about purpose in this chapter is to show how we can begin practically as well to work towards freedom. Because the way I understand freedom is to live purposefully. That is, you're having an effect in mind, and you're working towards that, and you're acting towards that in freedom. So basically, that's what I see as the whole purpose of this chapter on purpose. So basically, to summarize, he just talks about purposefulness is really the reverse process of cause and effect. And basically, we need to realize the difference between purpose and the law, an object having lawfulness, and that's the main points in this paragraph. So if there's any questions or comments, just send me a message. That's all we're going to cover for this chapter. 12 is kind of short, just slightly longer than this chapter, so that should be fun. Have a good day. Bye.